1882, Paris. A little-known scientist has discovered a whole new way to kill. It's a period the French call the Belle Époque, the beautiful era, defined by rapid advancement in arts and technology, funded by a colonial empire near the height of its powers. Impressionism is born. Art Deco will be soon. Photography, invented here not long ago, has already hit many of its biggest milestones. High-speed images are possible, and even color photos have been possible for decades. But cameras still suffer one enormous constraint. They can only take one picture at a time. The most common process of the day has photographers expose a single shot for several seconds, remove it from the camera, and bring it to a dark room immediately before a second can be taken. The resulting portraits are immaculately posed and famously lifeless. A camera that operates continuously is the obvious next frontier for the medium, and one of the big leaps required to achieve cinema. The pioneers of the form recognize this new horizon and have spent the past several years running into it like a brick wall, getting nowhere. But this year, someone has finally built a camera that can pull it off. It's not Edward Muybridge, it's not Thomas Edison, but a Parisian, Étienne-Jules Marey. He's done it. The first movie camera is a gun. Now, Marey is not a photographer by trade. While he goes on to take thousands of photos, many of which are breathtaking, he's not trying here to invent cinema or even really make art. He invents this device, the chronophotographic gun, during his career as a designer of medical instruments. That's what this is to him. To this point, doctors mostly examined their patients by eyesight and then just wrote down whatever they saw. A fact Marey simply could not abide. As had recently been confirmed, human bodies do not receive the world objectively. Our perception of light, sound, and temperature is plainly wrong. And even the tools we build to work around these flaws, the stethoscope, the stopwatch, are operated by a human hand. By Marey's account, medicine was stuck in the past, ignoring the Enlightenment principles that allowed other fields, math, physics, philosophy, a glimpse at what seemed like objective, unmediated truth. As the inventor's biographer puts it, nature had to testify to itself, to translate itself through the inflection of curves and subtle trajectories that were truly representative. Hidden, minute, and fleeting, life's movements had to be captured. Life is movement, and nothing else. To this end, Marey spent his life building medical instruments that observed directly from the physical world. An artificial heart that measured its own blood flow. A machine to transcribe the pulse into a physical line. As much as it was for human health, it was ultimately a crusade against the human body. And the chronophotographic gun is his biggest breakthrough yet. Simply aim at a target, pull the trigger, and faster than you'll notice, a magazine unloads 12 shots that describe movement better than the human eye can fathom. The gallop of a horse, the flap of a bird's wings, not just captured, but quantified, ripe for measurement, conversion into data. A whole, clean through human subjectivity. Marey eventually managed to capture each shot on its own photographic plate and replay them. A movie. But at first, and most iconically, all 12 exposures were captured on a single pane of glass. I can't tell you what these pictures do to me. I almost feel like I would just look at them. What can I say that'll beat these? It amazes me how easily human bodies lose all their qualities. By the third or fourth shot even, the edge between a figure and its world no longer exists. This is especially pronounced in the images when Marey dressed his model in pitch black, save for these thin strips of white down their torso and limbs. The body vanishes against the dark backdrop of the studio, but its movements are preserved. It makes for an unobstructed view right into the essence of a person. Life is movement and nothing else. The spectral quality of these images is like nothing I've seen. It's even better knowing that Marey was a pure pragmatist and wasn't going for this effect. He just sought out reality and found that this is what it looks like. It's stunning. Decades later, camera guns inspired by Marey's were commissioned by air forces around the world. Fighter pilots ran through combat drills with perfect replicas of machine guns, only loaded with film canisters instead of bullets. They would shoot at targets, and if the photos were framed neatly, the subjects perfectly centered, they would know a real enemy would have been blown to pieces. In World War II, these cameras were deployed on both sides, any combat advantage canceling out, only lending a new surgical precision to the evisceration of human bodies. But Marey wasn't around to see any of that. He died in 1904 of heart disease. His last photos were of smoke dissipating in air. Orange line going west. Everyone in this metro is burning holes into me. This old woman wearing a knit cap is standing so close right now. She can't be more than 5'5", but she's towering over me as I write this with the most vicious glare. Does she want my seat? There are loads of seats. Why this one? I'm tired. I have like 10 more stops. Another one to my right is leering. Sweaty button-down shirt, open at the top, about 50. Looks for men are so confusing. Do they want to fight me or fuck me? I don't think they know. When a scene like this goes on too long, I just get up and move, but since these new trains are one long, bending car, everyone notices. Sets me up for thanks a lot glances from moms wrangling young kids, students shuffling out of the way with their bags at their feet. I don't really want any of that. I'm just trying to get home. In discussions about photography, a persistent idea that comes up is that some cultures don't like having their picture taken due to a deeply held belief that cameras steal the soul. This claim is most famously repeated in Susan Sontag's On Photography, a book so foundational it's cited in nearly everything I read for this video. Sontag says, as everyone knows, primitive people fear that the camera will rob them of some part of their being. The primitives this claim usually refers to are indigenous people in Africa and North America, which is to say, well over 1,000 cultures with a huge variety of belief systems. It's kind of a wild generalization, especially given there are photos of these people, loads of them, dating back almost 200 years. You might not be surprised to hear that this idea that people think photos can steal their soul is basically a myth. But the story of how it emerged contains a real lesson about the people who spread it. It wasn't pulled completely from thin air, instead spun out wildly and speculatively from a fact that is true. Many cultures throughout history have believed that a fragment of a person, like a hair or a nail clipping, retains a connection to them and can be used to impact them in some way, hurt them, heal them, influence their behavior, and so on. This broad genre of belief is very common around the world, with versions of it existing on all 7 continents. 6, maybe not Antarctica, but definitely Europe. The fact that we never hear this idea about Europeans is the first clue. In 1878, the German anthropologist Richard Andre drew a circle around this pretty varied group of beliefs and referred to them all as something German. In English, we call it sympathetic magic. He claimed that indigenous people of the Americas applied this belief not just to physical relics, but also to photographs and drawn portraits. His evidence for this was a small handful of anecdotes about indigenous people not wanting to be drawn or photographed. Andre said they refused out of a fear that a depiction could be used to exercise some kind of power over their soul. Building on his work, another anthropologist named James Fraser took it further and said Native people thought depictions captured their souls. Both found these beliefs utterly illogical. To the enlightened European gentleman, cultures evolved in a straight line upward, and superstitions about a person's intangible essence betrayed an outdated mindset, a mindset the civilized world had long grown past. Now is the era of science, of machines, of data, of reason. In other words, Native people are undeveloped and should be subject to the will of a more advanced race. From the 1600s up into today, honestly, Europeans have looked for reasons to believe they are better than other cultures. This allows them and their descendants to justify a global conquest they already wanted to do for economic reasons. Europeans didn't colonize the world because they thought they were better. They convinced themselves they were better in order to colonize. The idea that indigenous people were superstitious and couldn't wrap their heads around modern science was extremely useful. And in the camera, it found a perfect avatar. As it was understood at the time, a photograph is not an interpretation of the world, like you get through the eye or a paintbrush or a doctor's notepad, fallible, subjective. Instead, it's an indisputable capture of the world. It's the result of real photons hitting a sensor and provoking a chemical reaction. This ability to trace the world directly just didn't exist before in any culture, and it was widely considered the most exciting thing about photography. Louis Daguerre described his daguerreotypes as not a way to make art, but a physical process by which nature reproduces itself. Edgar Allan Poe said it was more truthful than any language, more true even than the objects it captures. In the Western view, photography didn't just reflect how humans saw the world, it superseded it. The camera was the physical embodiment of Western superiority, reason crushing intuition, technology triumphing over wilderness. It was, in every way, a better eye. Or at least they wanted it to be. The evidence for Andre and Fraser's claim that primitives believe photos take something from them is pretty shaky. The art historian Zoe Strother went over their evidence, which again was a couple dozen indigenous people declining a portrait in the mid-1800s, and found no real through line between them all. One man didn't feel respected by the artist. One woman was in mourning, so she couldn't change into clean clothes. Some people refused for unspecified reasons. Others were very clear. Strother says, in one of the most interesting incidents, when a man in Canada realized that his likeness had been sketched on the sly, he asked, point blank, whether or not Kane, the portrait artist, intended to give it to the Americans, against whom he bore a strong antipathy. Kane speculated that the man feared, superstitiously, that the portrait could put him in their power. But surely anxiety about his picture circulating in the hands of US authorities was justified for someone moving back and forth across the border during a politically volatile period. As a quick aside, yes, the story was about drawn portraits, not photos. That part of the myth didn't really stick around. I suspect because drawings are not a new technology, and saying people are afraid of cameras was more compelling evidence that they were backwards. All the people in these stories are dead now, so we can't ask if they were spiritually opposed to photography. Maybe some were. But at least some of the stories held up as evidence show no sign of this, and many signs that those people just had reasonable concerns about how their depictions could be used. During the mid-1800s, many of the photographers and artists that Native people encountered were on colonial expeditions, scoping out land for settlement or resource extraction. Some were taking the pictures to cities and selling them, often without paying their subjects. Some of them were race scientists, trying to ascertain people's essential qualities by the shape of their heads. There were just so many reasons to object, and to say that everyone did so out of superstition, well, it's motivated reasoning. By the end of the century, these colonial expeditions had served their purpose. British and American governments had stolen lots of indigenous land and were amping up campaigns of starvation and cultural genocide. In this context, white photographers saw a new opportunity, traveling around and capturing images of what they considered disappearing cultures. They staged their subjects sternly in traditional garb, either in untamed landscapes or living quarters made to look squalid, and sold the photos to white audiences interested in their primitive ways. The photos were a way of fixing indigenous people in the past as people who were unfit to move into the modern era and whose deaths were sad but essentially a done deal. Because this narrative was false, the photos supporting it regularly had to be faked. Photographers made their subjects wear wigs, makeup, and clothing that they normally wouldn't, with the aim of making them seem more foreign to white audiences. Sometimes, photographers would go in after the fact and paint over modern technology to support their narrative. Do these photos, staged and retouched, give access to a deeper truth only possible through Western means? Or are they just a better way to lie? When Susan Sontag repeats this idea about cameras capturing a person's essence in the 1970s, there's an air of smugness about it. She says, few people in this society share the primitive dread of cameras that comes from thinking of the photograph as a material part of themselves. By dismissing this dread as primitive, Sontag gets to do the same thing that white settlers did a century before her, as they clamored over doctored shots of Native people. She gets to understand herself, in contrast to them, as modern, as rational. Cameras steal the soul. Who would believe such a thing? Get this, Susan Sontag. This essay I've been quoting from, The Image World, is all about the mystical properties of photos. She describes them as talismans, calls them magical 3 separate times, and takes every chance she gets to compare cameras to guns. Is there a gun that doesn't take something from you? Just like the primitive she's imagining feel this way, Sontag believes this power comes from the camera's capacity for direct observation. It captures the light that people put off. That's weird. We don't know what to do with it. Artists and philosophers have spent almost 200 years working through the implications of this new power the camera gives us. In the writing on this topic, much of which is European, language of violence, theft, and perfect essences is common. When Sontag or anyone evokes soul stealing, it's because they find it compelling. I think she talks about it through some imagined primitives as a way to flirt with the idea while protecting her identity as a rigorous Western thinker. When you take a picture, what is being taken? If nothing else, control. Photos being understood as traces of reality gives them a staggering level of power over what's considered real. We know they can lie. They can be retouched, used to push false narratives, or nowadays fabricated entirely. But somehow they still retain this authority. That's scary. It's disconcerting. A stranger can waltz into your community, take a copy of you to their specifications, and carry it around with them. That copy won't just be assumed to speak for you, it'll supersede anything the real you does or says. What do you mean you're still alive? I have the picture right here. An interesting factoid that does the rounds every few years online is that the symptoms of delusional disorders, like schizophrenia, vary quite a lot between cultures. The way this is usually stated in viral Reddit posts is that members of individualistic societies, like the US, have delusions and hallucinations that make them feel threatened. But members of more communal societies instead hallucinate reminders to do chores or voices of ancestors, experiences that are neutral or even positive. Now, the data doesn't really bear this out. There's actually a lot of research comparing delusions and hallucinations across cultures, and while you'll find some fascinating differences there, it remains true just about everywhere that conditions like these are really hard to live with. However, one thing this factoid gets right is that delusions can teach us a lot about the societies in which they happen. Certain delusions becoming more or less common over time can offer an interesting window into how a society is evolving and what issues preoccupy its citizens. Over the past 20 years, clinicians have noted an explosion in delusions involving the internet. The most common versions of these are that the internet is spying on a person, that posts contain secret messages they can decode, and especially that shadowy forces are using the internet to control their thoughts. Obviously, the specifics of these beliefs are new. The internet is new. But in this case, history rhymes. Delusions about being surveilled or controlled by the internet are part of a broader trend that dates back centuries. Fears of psychic interference by what early psychoanalysts called, I'm not even going to try, something German. In English, we call them influencing machines. Nefarious, highly advanced contraptions working just out of sight. The details of these machines vary hugely from one delusion to the next, but most often they employ whatever technology is currently changing the world. In the 1810s, shortly after the discovery of gases like oxygen and chlorine, a man thought he was being surveilled using a machine that emitted gas. In the 1910s, patients reported having their thoughts controlled by highly sophisticated telephones and film projectors. It makes sense that similar beliefs nowadays would mostly involve artificial intelligence, smart technology, and especially the internet. The tricky thing about these delusions now is sometimes they're right. Dr. Elena V. Burns, who runs a schizophrenia treatment program, recently wrote about how surveillance is making it harder to do her job. More and more, I find myself twisting into cognitive and linguistic pretzels, trying to help my patients and myself determine where we draw the line between psychosis and reality. In response to my query about whether he uses the internet, one patient responded, "Do I use the internet or does the internet use me?" Well, there's truth in both statements, and one would need a more sophisticated knowledge of government and corporate monitoring, surveillance capitalism, and artificial intelligence to determine the extent to which we humans still retain our agency over computers. When we're discussing social media platforms and my patients tell me that the algorithm is hacked, I cannot help but agree. Yes, it is true. Your phone is listening to you, the camera on your laptop is watching you, and the advertisements you see online are predicting what you will buy and the websites you will want to browse. As you can imagine, this makes things tough for people trying to work through their delusions. In support forums for schizophrenia and psychosis, you'll find scores of users whose fear of technology is really affecting their lives, but aren't sure how to move forward because they know the delusions aren't entirely wrong. The scope of modern surveillance is hard to overstate. Police forces can recognize your face out in public and track your movements from one camera feed to the next. Your job can watch your screen, track the emotions in your voice, and monitor your social feeds for signs you might unionize. People's doorbells watch you walk down the sidewalk, and police can force them to hand over the footage. There are eyes everywhere, and they're better than yours. They catch your motion, describe it mathematically, and compress it down into irrefutably perfect copies of you that sustain entire industries out of your view. Even if you don't think about this much, it measurably changes how you act. Studies show that citizens tolerate being surveilled fairly well and eventually stop giving it much thought, but continue to act more docile and reliable after they forget. It makes you a better employee, a better citizen. The surveillance camera has taken something from you, a complex and unstable kinetic energy. Every day, it reanimates your body in predictable loops. These are deeply suspicious times. There are a million reasons to be paranoid, and trying not to cave to them can feel absurd. How do you stop feeling watched when you are being watched? In the old port, walking around, just found somewhere to sit. I've been spending a lot of time down here lately. It's hokey and morally questionable, but I don't know, it's deserted this time of year and the lights are nice. Writing has been impossible lately. Every time I try to make a point or even form a thought, it gets interrupted by fascists or TERFs or the worst kind of liberal. I hear their voices in my head so much clearer than I hear my own. They burrow into my brain a little deeper with every round of backlash, every death threat. I hate how much of myself I've ceded to them. I hate that I exist in their heads too. In between the ads I get for body hair removal and bras for small-chested women, fair, my social feeds like to show me videos of people breaking the social contract, I guess. Shouting at strangers, committing petty crimes, giving into road rage, admonishing service workers, starting fistfights, and so on. The actions depicted in these videos run a wide gamut from unpleasant but clearly deserving of empathy, like people having mental health crises, to reprehensible and worthy of public shaming, like racist outbursts. But I talk about them in the same breath because the internet treats these videos as a single genre. The public freakout video, understood as intense public altercations, usually filmed by a bystander. Public freakout videos go viral every day on every platform because they fulfill a need that just about everyone shares. They make us feel good about ourselves. As viewers, we get to cringe at bad behavior, think to ourselves, ugh, I wouldn't have done that, and feel a little comforted about our own milder social missteps. Whether it's a fascist spouting homophobic slurs or two guys jump kicking each other inside a 7-Eleven, the end result is feeling better about that time you cut in line at the grocery store. Look at them go. I want to hone in on one particular move the subjects of these videos often pull. To set the stage, a person has started acting out, and another person, either the target of their behavior or a bystander, has noticed and started filming.
You know what? Because you're an illegal, and you know what? You don't live in Flower Mound, and you're door dashing. You know what? Why are you entitled to be here with an illegal card? Go ahead.
When the subject realizes they're being filmed doing something embarrassing, they don't usually walk out of frame or cover their face. More often, they respond by pulling out their own phone and filming the person back.
I don't know.
You know what? I'll do that.
On its face, this seems pointless. The altercation is already being recorded. A second angle probably won't offer some new info that exonerates them. So why do people respond this way? Because cameras are guns. The witness of an outburst starts filming, in part for safety reasons, but in part to intimidate their subject. The subject interprets this as a threat to their bodily integrity. A stranger is doing something with their body, creating a version of it that's fixed permanently in one unflattering moment. The subject has no idea where that video will be posted or whose minds it'll live on inside. When they pull out their camera, they're engaging with it almost exclusively as a stand-in for a weapon. What a camera actually does is an afterthought. Their aim is to level the power balance and turn a shooting into a standoff.
I can get in your face too.
This almost never works, mind you, but it does offer some insight into why people are so quick to film and photograph strangers. It's about drive, it's about power. Or no, I guess it's about Nightcrawler, it's about power. Easy mistake. The threat of a camera is one we all recognize. A video taken at an inopportune moment can launch a career or a harassment campaign or a criminal investigation. We see it happen so often. I suspect that being non-consensually filmed is a defining fear of the times we're living through, especially for my generation. Everyone figures out how to cope with this in their own way. Some let it limit their behavior. Don't dance at the club. Don't do anything that might get you judged after the fact. Some entrench themselves in the world only as viewers, mocking others at any opportunity, contributing to a harsher world that only drives them further into isolation. Others see the immense, violating, soul-stretching power of a camera, and all they see is power. A TV remote, a picture frame, a coffee cup lid, A water bottle, a pen, a rock, a houseplant, a shaving cream can, a phone charger, a teddy bear, a box of cereal. What do these objects have in common? They're watching you. These products, sold in shady corners of the internet, have tiny cameras hidden inside them. They record continuously, often in 4K, and provide a live feed to the owner's phone. The vendors often market these products as they would plain old security cameras. The marketing copy says they exist to expose misconduct or protect the owner from theft. But security cameras generally want to be noticed. Half the point is for the group being surveilled to see that they're being recorded and change their behavior, decide not to steal or trespass or whatever else. Hidden cameras, on the other hand, are mostly needed by stalkers, abusive partners, and perverts, present company excluded. There just aren't many normal reasons to record someone without their knowledge. Some exist, for sure. A person might want to catch their boss breaking labor laws or gather evidence they're being abused. While the companies that sell these products can point to these few legitimate use cases, their clients feel no pressure to be coy and gladly post reviews that say, "I use this to watch a couple have sex. Works great." These devices are often pretty impractical. They're expensive, they run on batteries, they often don't capture audio, they're integrated with janky mobile apps, and everyone carries around a camera in their pocket now. This makes me think the point of hidden cameras is more than just their ability to film. The people who buy them find something intrinsically satisfying about owning and placing one. You could say it's a power fantasy, and you wouldn't be wrong, but the ability to place a new houseplant or alarm clock in a room suggests the client already controls the physical space they want surveilled. They're more likely to be a parent than a child, a boss than an employee. If they wanted to install a regular security camera, they probably could. What do they gain from this that they don't already have? My guess, and it's just a guess, is that hidden cameras allow their owners to harness a kind of power typically reserved for states and large corporations, to always be watching and never be seen. Anyone can put up a security camera, but not anyone can install a keylogger or log someone's search history, operate the kind of surveillance that goes unnoticed, the kind that makes good on that promise of giving access to a truer reality, an unmediated one. The perfect gift for that special guy who wants to preside over his space like a tyrant. If an object as innocuous as a cereal box can be turned in his favor, anything can be. It allows him to see every object in the room in his image, as an organ of his body. If it's not a camera, it's a potential camera, and therefore a potential threat. For people who've found one of these cameras in their space, that's certainly how it lands.
It looked like a screw, but I had a feeling that it was not a screw. I was shaking. I was in sheer, utter panic. I don't even know a word to describe how low and violated I felt at that time.
I was sick. I felt sick to my stomach. I couldn't believe that someone would actually do that.
I never expected that this thing will happen to me or to my friend.
They had intimate footage of my wife and I. It felt like an extreme violation of our marriage.
You know, when you're 13, you want that privacy. Play your music, text your friend. But now, all she does is lay in the bed.
I can't imagine how destabilizing this would be. Violated is the word everyone seems to use. I hear stories like this way too often. I don't know if that means they happen a lot, but I definitely hear about them. Stories about hidden camera discoveries frequently go viral. News channels pick them up, streamers react. All of the former, and everyone in the comments, urges vigilance. A New York Times article from 2019 offers this as advice. People worry that Big Brother and Big Tech are invading their privacy, but a more immediate concern may be the guy next door or a shifty coworker. Security experts warn that we are in the throes of a bugging epidemic. It is not paranoid to take precautions. Look for anything in your surroundings that appears disturbed, out of place, or odd. Surveillance can be done by more than clunky nanny cams. It can be conducted with wireless micro devices, some as small as a postage stamp, that can be stashed in hard-to-spot places, like inside clocks, light fixtures, and air vents. Be wary of anything with an inexplicable hole in it, like a hole drilled into a hairdryer mount in a hotel bathroom. And scrutinize any wires trailing out of something that's not obviously electronic, like a desk, a bookcase, or a plant. That's kind of a lot. Is there actually a basis for this level of vigilance? Are we really at the point where everyone should be sweeping their spaces for hidden cameras? I don't know. To me, it seems overblown and kind of irresponsible, given the prevalence of paranoid delusions about being watched. But if I were the CEO of a hidden camera company, it's exactly the message I would want out there. It would make my product seem really effective to prospective customers. And on top of that, if people become more vigilant, more paranoid, there's a whole new market to tap. The New York Times article includes some input from Jill Johnston, CEO of KJB Security Products, the world's largest vendor of cameras posing as TV remotes, picture frames, water bottles, and teddy bears. She urges caution too. Johnston is quoted as saying, "I used to sell mostly cameras, but in the last few years, it's more detection devices. There are just a lot more things to spy on you with. It's really changing our business model, to be honest." Surveillance companies materially benefit from the fear their products creates. It allows them to play both sides, problem and solution, and always come out on top. Disdain for their products paradoxically creates more demand for their products, and at the same time, keeps the heat off their industry. It shifts people's concerns away from the much more impactful mass surveillance done by governments and corporations and diverts those fears toward people, next-door neighbors and shifty coworkers. Have I mentioned that KJB is a wholesaler? You can't buy from them directly. They do a lot of their business with police forces. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, those are riot cops. In this essay, I've mostly talked about the feelings of disempowerment and destabilization that come with being watched. But surveillance is a two-way street. The people who run the cameras and the citizens they answer to have an experience of their own. What's that like? What does it do to a person to look? A paper from last year, titled "Exploring the Impact of Security Technologies on Mental Health," names several ways these products affect both watcher and watched. Unsurprisingly, the upsides mostly go to the watchers. The many benefits listed boil down to: 1, surveillance are safer from threats like crime and emergencies, and 2, surveillance feel safer from threats and go about their lives with a greater sense of peace. The downsides listed all apply to the people being watched. It destroys their sense of privacy, erodes their trust in institutions, lends credence to paranoia, causes them to censor themselves, and you've seen the video. It does lots of things. The general pattern this suggests is an offloading of anxieties from the powerful onto the powerless. That surveillance is bad for the people being watched and good for the people controlling the cameras, or who understand the cameras to be working for them. I can't help but feel something is missing. We're filming this segment in the Montreal neighborhood of Park Extension. It's where a lot of people settle when they first come to Canada, home to the province's biggest Indian and Pakistani migrant communities, and also me, until a few years ago. This is where I lived from 2019 through 2021, including several waves of COVID lockdowns, during which I got laid off unexpectedly and found myself with a lot of time and not much to do but just walk around. Park X is a small neighborhood, but it's dense and kind of austere from the front. Long, narrow strips of apartment buildings, not much tree cover. So on my walks, I mostly hung out in these alleyways, which are full of vegetable gardens, stray cats, and flowering trees. One backyard on my street was completely full of bikes. We're talking like 50 or 60 of them, all rusty, tires missing. It's a lovely place and completely unique, but it's also the poorest neighborhood in the city. At its western edge is a much wealthier, whiter suburb, the town of Mount Royal. And between the two neighborhoods, the suburbanites erected a long fence, 2 meters high. Sometimes they lock it. One day, aching for a change of scenery, I walked through while it was open. I strolled down TMR's winding, looping roads, peeked into windows of houses that deserved magazine covers. Eventually, I found myself at the neighborhood center, where I wandered the aisles of a health food store for 20 minutes, and then left without buying anything, because no amount of vegan sausage could distract me from the fact that I was just miserable there. It was a terrible place to be. Everywhere I looked, I saw a reminder I was being surveilled. Neighborhood watch signs on the lampposts, home alarm stickers on every door, CCTV photos of shoplifters printed out and displayed like hunting trophies in store windows. I felt completely exposed. So that was my experience, basically in step with the paper. And I'm sure the neighborhood was designed that way to afford its residents a sense of protection from the undesirables who surround it on 3 or 4 sides. But as I made my way home that day, I couldn't help but feel sad for the residents. I mean, if this all-seeing eye made me uncomfortable, they must be terrified. To structure your entire community around fear like that, what could it do but reinforce itself? Whether it's a Ring doorbell, an in-home surveillance system, or CCTV inside a grocery store, a security camera has its own way of seeing. Someone surveying its footage doesn't stop to check whether a person in frame is a teacher or a senior or a really nice guy. They only look for signs that the person is a threat. They evaluate each individual who enters the frame, some more than others, in that context. Could they be here to put me in danger? That is not a healthy question to ask about every person you see. That is not where your mind should be going. But when I talk with some people from the suburbs, not all, but many, I'm struck by how central fear is in their lives. They tell me how they never do what seem to me like pretty basic things. Riding the metro, walking downtown, just in case someone hurts or harasses them. This distrust of the public feeds back into itself. You feel afraid, so you equip yourself to identify threats, so you scrutinize everything as a potential threat, so you feel more afraid, so you become more sensitive to threats, and so on, spiraling off tangentially from any realities about crime, which is, in TMR, extremely low. It's one of the safest neighborhoods in one of the safest cities, in one of the safest provinces, in one of the safest countries on Earth. It makes no difference. The source of their fear isn't actual crime, it's their own vigilance. This leaves it with no natural off-ramp. If a community can afford to, they just indulge this fear in increasingly absurd ways. Residents of TMR are entitled to a free service whereby, if they go to town for a few days, a public security agent will visit their house daily to check the locks and make sure their second or third car hasn't been stolen. You know, because nobody's afraid there. It feels good to look down on people until you realize that being above society is also being apart from it. It pulls you deeper into your own home, your own phone, your own head, and makes the world outside feel impossibly cruel. Time and time again, people try to harness this power to wrench back some control from the world, to stop the camera from taking from them whatever it is they feel is missing. They don't get what they're looking for. Okay, something crazy just happened. I don't really want to write this one out and read it back. It's November 11th. I was upstairs at a metro station after a meeting, and there was this cable that was throwing a really striking shadow on a building nearby. It kind of looked like barbed wire. So I pull out my phone to take a picture, and this guy comes up from behind me, and he starts to ask me why I'm taking a picture, what I'm doing with my phone. At first I think he's a city worker, because I know there are like privacy rules about taking pictures in the metro. So I tell him I just thought that shadow on that building was cool, and I point at it. And he starts talking about how you can't just go taking pictures of people. You can't do that. I tell him, no, I would never do that. There's no one in my picture. And I show him the picture as proof. But it doesn't calm him down at all. At this point, he's just getting angrier. I get on the escalator and he gets on too, and no one else is around. He starts shouting at me, "You can't take pictures of me. Stop it." He also doesn't like that I'm wearing a mask. He keeps telling me to take it off. When we get to the bottom of the escalator, he goes right to the metro ticket person, and he tries to report me. I don't know for what. I wasn't breaking any rules. By this point, I'm just trying to get away though. So I swipe my card through and I walk down the platform, and I look for a spot with a lot of women around, because I figure if he tries anything, they'll probably have my back. Eventually he comes down the platform too, and as soon as he sees me, he starts shouting at me. It's not super coherent, mind you, but "We see you. We know what you're doing. We're gonna follow you all the way downtown." That one's verbatim. That one was weird. At this point, I'm pretty activated, so I lower my mask and I say, "Look, I'm not bothering anyone, man." And he says, "You're bothering us." Us being, I guess, the public, or some political sect he's a part of. A few minutes later, the train comes, and I run down the platform and I get in a different car. Thankfully, it's one of the old trains. At this point, I'm in total fight or flight mode. Anyone who even vaguely fit his profile, a big old white guy, was registering as an immediate threat. So I'm freaking out. I get off at the next stop. I break into a jog. I find a bus headed vaguely toward my house, and I hop on. And before I can even catch my breath, I'm already empathizing with this asshole. The bitterness, the paranoia, I feel the same, We're kind of, I think to myself, this is insane, but we're kind of twin flames. Both of us were intruding on each other's space, and both of us were anxious about being intruded on. And that's what the conflict was. I didn't like that he was all up in my space, but I was also taking pictures. He didn't like that I was taking pictures, but he also wanted me to take my mask off. He wanted me more visible, easier to surveil. You know what the worst part is? It's a nice picture. It's my favorite picture I've taken in a while, and now it'll just have this memory attached to it forever. It makes me really sad that this thing I love doing is so charged. I take pictures because I think things are beautiful and meaningful, and I want them to last. I don't think there's anything in there about dominating anyone. But that's what cameras mean to us, because they were designed at a point when every technology had to be used for conquest and violence. We've gotten used to seeing them used that way, and now we use them the same way. But I don't know if it's anything inherent to the act of taking a picture. We could probably turn anything into a gun. So, obviously I'm going to post it to Instagram. Hello? I had to change out of the turtleneck. I felt like those kids in the Arctic Monkeys meme. Anyway, huge news for me specifically. There's a new Lindsay Ellis video. It answers a question I have genuinely asked myself. Why do grown-ups love the kids' TV show Bluey? Over the last few years, Lindsay has made a ton of new videos on topics ranging from Guy Fieri to Lord of the Rings. I can't lie to you, I've watched every single one like 3 times. They're so good. If you would like to join me in my normal, healthy viewing habits, I have great news. Nebula has free trials now. If you sign up like normal, you get 3 days where you can watch anything at all on the platform before committing to a subscription. You could theoretically sign up for free, watch all 12 of Lindsay's Nebula originals, and cancel easily without spending a dime. If, that is, you want to miss out on all the other exclusive videos by Big Joel and Jacob Geller and Angela Collier and, me, to say nothing of some killer original miniseries from like Broe Deschanel and Maggie Mae Fish, or the feature-length documentaries by Bobby Broccoli, and I don't have enough time to tell you about all these. The studio rental's up in like 20 minutes. Look, if you somehow manage to watch every Nebula exclusive that catches your eye in those 3 days, I will be impressed and honestly kind of worried. Take a walk, man. Heading into the holidays, it's also really easy to give Nebula as a gift. You can send someone a gift card for a month of Nebula, a year, or even a lifetime membership. As always, steeply discounted for fans of yours truly. Whether you're getting Nebula for yourself or someone in your life, heading to go.nebula.tv/LilyAlexander will give you 40% off an annual or lifetime plan. The lifetime plan works out to $300 one time. Annual plan is $36 a year. It's pretty good.